That I heard from Steve yesterday, and he wasn't feeling well, so he wasn't sure he was going to make tonight's meeting. So it's almost 2 after now. So the council will need to select someone to fill in his chair.
I would nominate good Councilor Karen,
I'll second that motion.
Chairman Pro Tem.
Okay, we've had this drill before, so usually I end up back here in a few minutes.
So they talk to people for a moment of silence, and then have the chief say a few words.
After the roll call or the meeting?
I would do it right at the beginning.
Okay.
The hammer must be in the drawer.
I probably won't need it. Wow, that is it.
Oh, there's
There we go.
That's all right. Before we call the meeting to order, obviously, this weekend, or beginning of the week, a tragedy happened within the town, and it affected all of us to a great degree. And so what I would like to do is, we lost a fighter fire, Mr. Higgins, and so what I would like to do at the beginning of the meeting is just have a moment of silence, please. And what we would like to do is, Chief, could you say a few words, please?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do appreciate the opportunity to speak about my friend. Scott was many things, and to the Winslow Fire Department specifically, he was an integral part. And I wish I had more time to get to know him. And in the seems like a week, but it's been just a day. And we're putting together the memorial and the service, and I'll be sending out the announcement here shortly. And as I was trying to think of things that I would be saying, I was kind of going through some comments on social media that people have posted, because Scott was more than just a fireman. Scott ran his Christmas tree farm, and he and Dawn operated the kennel. He was a grandfather, and he was a consummate professional. And I gotta say that the members of this department did everything that they could. Going through these types of calls are difficult at best. But when it's one of your own, it's even more tasking. And we're a family, and we're grieving together, we're working together, we're supporting each other. And without question, the fire department family is not exclusive to Winslow in this situation. I have been blessed to have been reached out from departments throughout the state asking for ways that they could honor and help out. I need to give special credit and thanks to Waterville Fire for their tremendous support in providing coverage while our members recuperate and decompress and grieve. And there's a 24-hour watch with Scott right now, and that has been without question, one of the most moving tributes that anybody could have. So in my going through social media and seeing how Scott impacted people's lives, I came across something, and it was very fitting and kind of ironic that as Councilman West posted his thoughts regarding Scott, and as he came in tonight, I told him how much it meant to me, the words he put down, and it just so happens that he had it printed out and asked for me to read it. So, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to take the time to read the words that Councilman West has.
Take all the time you want.
It is titled, Who Passed? I was asked the other day, who passed? The short and simple answer was Scott Higgins. As I look back, I wish I could answer that question again, because who passed was more than just a name. What I should have said was Scott Higgins is his name, but who he is more important. So let me tell you about who passed. First and foremost, a man that put family first. He was a son, father, husband, brother, uncle, son-in-law, and grandfather. He had mothers, fathers, sisters and brothers, children and grandchildren, nieces and nephews. But did you notice that I didn't say step or half before any of those titles? Why? Because to him, they were family, blood or not. He was a man with a huge heart. He would do anything he could for anyone. It didn't matter if you were a lifelong friend or someone he just met, he would be there for you. He was a worker from dawn to dusk, and often beyond, he was always doing something. Whether at the fire station, Delta ambulance, the tree farm, or at home in the yard or the barn, he was a worker. He was a leader and a mentor. He strived to be the best damn firefighter there was. He was always learning, teaching, and doing whatever it took to better himself and those beside him, doing what he loved. I know that he made me a better firefighter, and in turn, I'm a better person because of him. To all his brothers and sisters in the fire, EMS world, past and present, if you had the pleasure of knowing Scoot, just know that you had a brother forever. The brother I never had. He was the easiest person to talk to. It never mattered what kind of day I was having, good or bad. A conversation with him always changed the day for the better. Always there with advice, or just to listen, and always with a smile and a hug. And let's never forget that laugh. For me, personally, as a brother, every exchange ended with, and I love you, man. We are forever family. My heart aches, but at least I know that I will always have you and the memories we made with me. I love you, brother. And every correspondence I ever got with Scott always ended with, be safe. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I know, being a former firefighter, that the brotherhood of firefighters is very, very strong. And when you lose somebody within that brotherhood, it is extremely difficult. And it's, from the town council, I cannot express, first of all, our gratitude for the service that he gave to the town of Winslow, but also the person that he was also. So again, from the town council and the whole town and the whole family of the town of Winslow family, my sympathies and compassions are with all the firefighters at this time.
Ready for roll call?
Is it two? Okay, roll call?
Jeff West?
Yes.
Ray Karen?
Here.
Ken Fletcher?
Here.
Jerry Clarion? Patricia West? Ben Twitchell?
Here.
Recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the previous minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Okay. Any discussion on the, okay, communications?
Yeah, we got to vote.
Oh, okay, vote to accept the minutes. All
All in favor?
in favor? Okay, so it's not a roll call. All in favor of the minutes? Okay. Communications, financial overview is,
We got Hank's here.
okay. Go to it.
All right, well, another year, another audit in the books. I think this was the first full year we've had with Tanya and the helms, at the helm there, and I think she did a pretty darn good job for her first full year with it. I must say that everything went really, really well with the audit. Brought my graph presentation to kind of go over with everybody, so we'll go through that. First page showing the summary of your audit results. Your financial statement opinion, it's unmodified, it's a clean opinion, that's what you want. We also issue a few other reports besides an opinion on your financial statements. There's reports required by government auditing standards. There we take a look at your internal control over your financial reporting and let you know if we find any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Happy to say no material weaknesses. And the only significant deficiency report is relying on us, the auditors, to prepare your financial statements. A lot of our smaller communities have this as a significant deficiency. Auditing standards require us to make this a significant deficiency. That doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing with the books. It just means you're relying on me to know all the rules. For those of you who read those financial statements cover to cover, which I'm sure is all of you here at this around the table, you'll notice there's a new liability that the GASB, the wonderful GASB, and if you don't know who GASB is, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, they set all the accounting rules that governments need to follow. But there's a new implicit liability that needs to be added to your books for the school department it's for their health insurance. It's not going to be a liability you have to pay. So if you did read it and you've seen this new $3.6 or $3.7 million liability, don't be up in arms that you're going to be having to cut a check or raise that money anytime soon. It's basically because retirees are allowed on their health plan, and that's what drives the rates up, and that's what they consider an implicit subsidy. I think it's kind of a silly rule to have people book that. You can never cut a check to make it go away. It's just going to kind of sit there. So if you are going through that and you're like, oh my, where'd this extra 3.5, 3.6 million come from? That's really what it is. We get all the information from actuaries and just put it in your financial statements. There's also reports required by the uniform guidance. This is where we take a look at your federal awards and test what's considered major programs. This year we tested the special education cluster that's called local entitlement over at the school. Happy to say no findings with that program, but we did have one finding because the school did not adopt uniform guidance procurement standards during that fiscal year. They have done that. I believe they have done that afterwards, but it just didn't happen through June 30, 2019. They had everything ready. They went through, Drummond Woodson was the ones who were drafting them up. They had everything drafted up. They just never had it passed by the school board. So that was the finding. We also issue management letters, and these are comments that are well below that threshold of significant deficiency, but I feel they're important enough to talk about. One here at the town is segregation of duties. I talk about this every year. Tanya does a lot of, she's in control of the books. She handles a lot of the payroll transactions, records journal entries, is in charge of the general ledger. It's not the perfect situation. You guys do have mitigating controls in place. If you didn't, this would most likely be a significant deficiency or material weakness. But since there are proper reviews in place, we drop it down to that management letter portion. But I do like to mention that every year because you do have someone in that finance position who controls a lot over those books. We also had some suggestions for the cash reconciliation process. We found that it's pretty cumbersome. What you had here, you had two people with, I don't know, combined 80 years of experience here at the town, both gone, and they have their set way of doing things, and they had that down to a science, but when it got handed off, I think that's where we hit some bumps in the road. And what we're doing is we're looking for ways to improve things, make things a little bit more streamlined, because there were some issues. There weren't any issues. The issues were just the time it was taking to get these banks reconciled. There wasn't any bad entries or bad bad accounting in there. It was just the way that everything's set up through the system. It took a while to learn and get that process down, but we're trying to work to make that a little bit more simpler, and so it's a little bit more efficient. On the school side, we always have some sort of issues with activity funds. The good part about it this year is there was no issues with any missing documentation, so that's a plus. But we did find that they were making some purchases out of the activity funds that most likely probably should have went through either the general fund or another type of fund. They bought some math books through those student activity funds, portable air conditioner. Most of those things are for like football, drama club, supplies for those natures. So those items seemingly didn't fit the bill for those student activity funds. And at the elementary school and at the junior high, they just weren't depositing monies in a timely manner. Sometimes we consider a week to be timely, and a lot of times what happens is they collect, $30 to $100, and they just don't take it to the bank right away. And we suggest at least going once a week so you don't have checks or cash just sitting around. So those were our audit results. Nothing too earth-shattering. You never want your auditor to show up with a lot of exciting news, because if I show up with exciting news, that means there was a lot bad that happened. So the more boring that I am, the better that you did. We don't tell you how good you did in writing. We always tell you how bad you did in writing and all the things that we found. Does anybody have any questions about any of those things before I jump into the actual financial information?
Just, you said a couple of statements. One, Tanya has a lot of responsibilities, and, for one person, what are the redundancies that you feel comfortable with that, we don't have, that we have checks and balances within the system?
Well, but the big thing is Mike reviews a lot of things, whether it be bank. Now, you have someone else doing the bank reconciliations, but she's involved with the payroll process and what gets entered. And a lot of those things are either reviewed by Mike or somebody else. But Mike has a big hand in a lot of the reviews and in the financial process here. So, I know Mike's retiring here soon.
Right.
So we need to make sure that whoever comes on board next is also performing those same reviews and keep an eye on the financial information. Because again, when you have one person who she can easily, make mistakes or do something bad because she has that opportunity. Now, we didn't see anything like that, but it's the opportunities there. But right now, there's a lot of reviews happening from Mike.
Do you suggest that we do somebody internally that's more within the...
Well, really, the only way to beat this is to hire more people, and that's usually out of the question. I think right now your setup isn't bad. That's why it's only a management letter comment, and I'd like to mention that one person's handling it a little bit too much. But I feel if you keep that review process in place by the town manager, I think you guys will be fine. We just need to make sure that those reviews keep happening, obviously. It won't be for FY20 when I come back, but FY21 is where I'd probably take a lot harder look at to make sure that there are those reviews still happening.
Right. Any other questions from any of the councilors? I noticed you also mentioned that some of the activities fees, that you've talked to Peter will put something in place to try to rectify that for future audits?
Right. We go over all those types of comments with everybody before we show up, and they're handling it. It's like
Right, I would imagine.
Policies
Yep.
being put in place. But yeah, they knew about those purchases, and they're going to try to curb that and make sure that they kind of just stick to the activities themselves.
Yep,
Kind of
sure.
weed out some of those other types of purchases.
Yep, okay.
We'll move on to the financial information. We'll talk about fund balance first, because that's what everybody likes to talk about. The general fund, this is all going to include school operations. For those of you who read the financial statements, you'll notice that the town general fund and the school general fund are broken out separately on there, but everything we're going to talk about is combined. Overall, your fund balance during the year increased around $527,000, and it was almost split evenly between the school and the town. Town side went up $282,000, and schools went up $245,000. A large chunk of that was from 2 one-time payments. On page 46 of your financial statements, it explains it, but you guys withdrew from Merck, which netted you almost $600,000 payment, which you put into a reserve. And then on the school, with the AOS dissolving, the school got a check for $94,000 for their share of what was left in the AOS. So right there, out of your increase of 527, that's, I just talked about 700,000, and those are one-time payments that aren't going to happen again. When you take a look at that breakdown of fund balance over in that far right column for 2019, you'll see that assigned portion, the green, nearly doubled. And again, that doubling is because of that Merck and the Merck withdrawal, and that's where that reserve's sitting. And it's sitting at about $560,000 now. You used a small chunk of that during the year. The other big one that's in that assigned is your sewer fund balance, and that sits at around $300,000. Page 33 in the financial statements will give you a listing of things that make up those assigned fund balances. The unassigned school deficit, you can see it's decreased down to 719. That includes the accrual for the teacher summer salaries, which was around 1.2 million during the year. So if you don't take that into effect, because those are salaries that are paid in July and August, they would have a fund balance on a budgetary basis. Positive fund balance on a budgetary basis. So let's see what happened during the year. Talked about the revenues, budget to actual. Now you can see the categories, and there's a lot more detail in Exhibit A2 in the financial statements, but you can see everything was pretty close with the exception of other revenues down there. Intergovernmental revenue beat the budget because you got more state education subsidy and state revenue sharing than what was originally anticipated. Charges for services took a small hit, just having less tuition students and shared services than was originally anticipated. Investment earnings higher than budgeted due to better interest rates. Also, with the bond that was issued, there's more cash in the bank to earn interest at that point. And other revenues, the one where you can see it's a pretty large negative. You guys were expecting to sell some town-owned property, Crow Road building, right, Mike?
It would have been Johnny's.
Johnny's. So you were expecting that sale, that didn't happen, but it was part of that was mitigated because it was getting offset with the rental payments that you're receiving as opposed to the sale of that property. And the one thing I'd love to point out on here is that utilization of prior year surplus. Budgeted to use $296,000 between the town and the school. And I always like to say, if everybody was the perfect budgeters, you guys were on point, everything came to the penny, your fund balance would have actually went down by $296,000 as opposed to increasing by the $520-something a year.
You know, if I could ask a clarifying question, was that $296,000 all in the school surplus we were planning on using?
I can tell you here in 1 second.
Because I didn't think we had planned to use
Yep.
any surplus.
That was all school.
For the town, okay, thank you.
On the expenditure side, expenditures came in very close. You see Public Works came in over budget. There were some unexpected repairs to some vehicles and just ice control exceeding projections. Education side, their budget came within 2.3%, which is the second closest I've had this year. We were the first until I did a different presentation, and they came within 1-point-some%. But that's pretty darn close. 2.3% under budget due to savings in wages, fuel, and tuition to private schools, which was usually in the special education line. Then on the protection side, overspent a bit due to the hiring of the new chief and some unanticipated repairs in those departments as well. But the positive variance on there, you can see the 222,000, that helped increase the fund balance. So what you're really not seeing on there, because the money goes straight to a reserve and it's not part of that budget process, that extra 600,000 from Merck isn't located on that revenue side. Fund balance as a percentage of budget, you know, rating agencies typically look for up to 20%. I mean, RKO has always been telling people, you know, 12 to 16 or 17%, which is 1.5 to 2 months on hand. You can see you've taken a dip from the prior year. You were up at around a little over 14.5%. Now you're about 12.67%. Now, when you take into account that school deficit, it puts you down below 10. It's the first time you guys have been down below 10, you know, since I can't remember when, so 2015. So your unassigned fund balance as a percentage of budget has dipped down a little bit more than normal for FY19.
You know, if I could ask one more question. That's 12% of the total budgeted expenditures, both school and town, right?
Correct.
So, looking at the difference in spending, budget expenditures between FY18 and FY19, our spending went up nearly $2 million. So that 12% of $2 million is $240,000. So my question is, we would have to have $240,000 more in the unassigned in FY19 than 18, just because we've gone up in spending by $2 million. Is that correct? Probably I'm not explaining it correctly.
Not quite 2 million.
Right,
I'd say
yeah,
about
so
$1.5
less-
million. But yeah, that does affect the percentages.
Right, so-
Because if you have the same number, but you got a higher
Right.
denominator.
Even
you know,
though that we had the
percentage goes down.
same amount of, if we had the same amount in the unassigned from year to year,
Right,
the percentage could go down because we've increased the spending.
right. But your unassigned on the town side did take a dip.
Oh, yes.
This year, it went down about 200,000 from the prior year. So the unassigned did go down. It came back on the school side. Theirs went up a bit, but the town sides went down around 200,000. So, you know, but then again, when you do have an increase on that budget,
Right.
the percentages will go down. Next one's a revenue distribution. This includes school operations, and then the next one's a school only. You can see that between taxes, which includes property taxes and excise taxes, and then the intergovernmental, which is your state revenue sharing, state education subsidy monies, those two pieces of pie for revenue make up 88% of all your general fund revenues. And you can see your taxes and the intergovernmental, both those percentages stayed pretty close. Intergovernmental went down 1%. And that's when we split to this other one, I'll explain a little better. You can see on the school-only side, local appropriation stayed about the same percentage-wise, up slightly, but that intergovernmental went down a lot. And that's just because there's new other revenues out there. With the dissolving of the AOS 92, what happened was they have more revenues for shared services now because they're collecting money for some of those shared services. So what happened is it's not that the state subsidy went down, it actually went up on the school side, but the fact that you have that much in other revenues, it didn't factor in as much. Your state, it went up 250 from the prior year, your state education subsidy, but those other revenues went up around 500,000, thus dropping the percentages. And the last two, no, these aren't the last two, but the next two graphs are pie charts. Basically, this is showing you the percentage of how your money is being spent. You can see education makes up a little under 62%. The two largest changes that happened on here was education actually went down 1%, and debt service went up 1%. Debt service, and that makes sense because principal payments kicked in for your 2017 bond. That was around 200,000 extra, so that's why your debt service went from about 3% to 3.9%. You're going to see this steadily increase because you got some other bonds that are kicking in here soon. Your 2018 bond kicks in with 115,000 of principal and interest, and then the 2019 school bond adds another 435,000, and that's just interest only. And then in 2021, that bond payment's going to be about 700,000 between principal and interest. So those are some things you got coming up that are fixed payments here in the next couple of years. And I know in FY FY22, one of your bonds is gone. That you make the last payment on. I can't remember which bond it is, but there's a bond that retires after the fiscal year 2021.
Yep.
So at least that'll negate some of that increase. And last but not least, the school lunch deficit. I'm going to talk about this until it goes away. I mean, it's just them. It's a hindrance on cash flow, and it's something that probably needs to be handled. Right now, they're budgeting to put in $60,000 a year. I'm not sure, I didn't look at the FY20 budget, if anything more was put in. But overall, the school lunch program lost $58,000 during the year, and then that transfer in of $60,000 got it to a positive $2,000 during the year. So without that transfer in, you just see that fund balance go down $58,000. That's common for school lunch programs. None of them are real winners or money makers. I'd never say any of them. Almost everybody has to fund them somewhat from their general fund. The 60,000 funds, you guys don't lose as much as some other people, but I think, I feel there should be a plan in place, or at least there needs to be a plan in place to eventually knock this 200 and some odd thousand deficit down to zero, and then figure out what you just need to fund during the general fund every year to keep that, kind of at a break-even point.
I could ask a question through the chair to the superintendent. After we've consolidated and we've rebuilt the cafeteria, what's your, I realize you can't guarantee anything, but what's your expectation? Do you think it'll be a little more volume and?
Here's what I can share with you.
Okay.
Even though that 208,000 looks bad, it's actually pretty good, because we had 2 people last year that were out all year that we didn't anticipate. So we were paying for those people. We were paying for subs for those people being out. So that was 2 people down that we didn't anticipate being out for injuries. So that doesn't look good, but it's actually better, moving in the right direction. As of this year, in the first quarter, when we started making comparisons, we had $4,000 in additional monies and revenues because we've increased points of service in the existing cafeteria right now. The anticipation is that if we enlarge that, we can provide more points of service, we'll be able to sell more food to students in a quality manner, in a timely fashion, so that will continue to increase. That's the hope.
Right, so at least there's a plan and a strategy.
There is a plan and a strategy.
Thank you.
And the minor changes have been made so far with the space that we have shown that, that path should show some results.
Good. Thank you.
With the reserve fund so low right now at about 14.5%, I think you mentioned, this upcoming budget season looking like if we increase taxes to any degree, that's going to up the percentage. Even if the fund balance stays, even if the reserve stays the same, we'll be knocking down some percentage as far as the reserve goes because we have a higher budget.
If the budget number keeps going up and the fund balance stays the same,
Right.
that percentage will continually decrease.
Right. Yeah. Where are we as far as critical area right now where, and I know this is a hot topic for us coming this budget season, which is just around the corner again, is how much do we have to put into reserves again and how much do we have to keep that percentage up? If we have to, to mitigate some of the mill rates, we have gone back into reserves on occasion, not using all the budgeted funds from reserves, but still, where are we right now? Are we at the point where, and I know that's going to be a council decision, but as far as the level of the reserve right now, how critical is it? Your opinion.
Let me first start saying that I'm an independent auditor and I'm only here to verify information.
Right.
I do not love giving financial advice. It's not my place to give financial advice. If I thought you were in some sort of critical place right now, I would mention it. I think things like, I like to bring up the deficit, not to throw the school under there, but it's the school lunch deficit's a big deal in my world, and that's where it's bringing it up. Like if I see in your fund balance as a percentage of budget start, continually stay under 10 and keep getting lower, then what you'll hear is just me mentioning it a lot more.
Yep.
I don't want to give suggestions on what I think your reserve should be. We always say 12 to 16%. which is 1.5 to 2 months, because if an emergency happens where you didn't collect tax revenues, you can handle that, you know.
Yep.
A boiler explodes, you can handle that, you know, with what you have there now. So without giving any financial advice.
No,
I think you guys are still okay now, but, you know, right now what I'm seeing is trending down.
Yep.
You didn't use fund balance in this last budget, you know, but you have the part you have to look at is, even though that's unassigned, you did gain on the assigned portion. So, I mean, your assigned fund balance, you gain that 600,000 that you could use from that mark. You know, there's monies in other places, but, you know, I think right now it's not at any sort of critical level, but, you know, it's eye-opening to me when I watch that, you know, fund balance as a percentage start to go down. That's when, you know, when it starts dipping even a little bit lower, you know, I might, yeah, you know,
right.
mentioning it a
right.
lot more in the future.
Yep. It's just something to think about when we have to upcoming budget season, obviously, again.
Yeah, good, Mr. Chairman, I think if I remember when we did the FY20 budget, the assumption was that we were gonna have the proceeds from the sale of Johnny's in there, which was, at least for that moment in time, have a significant increase in the fund balance. Now, of course, we were gonna use a pretty heavy portion of that just to balance the FY20.
Yeah.
So I think the challenge going ahead is to how many other unknowns or surprises we're gonna run into that's gonna eat into that, I call it the revenue from the sale. You know, I haven't got the answer, but.
Yeah, I know
but
the
I think
challenges that
was
we,
what I thought
obviously,
was,
with the,
that's gonna give us a boost, a one-time boost that will help us get through whatever we gotta get through.
right.
And the one thing I just, like what I mentioned earlier with your debt service, you know, you're gonna have an extra 550,000 in FY20 and then another 150 on top of that in FY21 that's fixed. You're not getting out of those payments at that point. Now you'll see a dip again, like I said, after FY21, but still, that's a significant increase over 2 years for just fixed payments. And I really doubt that salaries or anything like that are gonna go down in the meantime.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Before I go, I definitely want to mention that how much help the staff is here when we come here. You know, Tanya's first year, and I would give her passing grade. I think she did a pretty darn good job. Calls and asks with questions, and I could see that she really wants to do this job really well. So, you know, that gave me, I get really weary when there's turnover. You know, I'm kind of used to, you know, I've been dealing with Gene for a long time here. So, you know, I was used to Gene, I knew what Gene did, but I didn't know what Tanya was gonna do. And I think Tanya is, you know, outdid my expectations and did pretty good. There's not that many journal entries. And again, she asked me questions because she wants to do it. The stuff that we do journal entries for, she wanted me to explain why I was giving her that journal entry so she could try to eliminate that in the future. So that's stuff I like to see as an auditor. And I wanna say also on the school side, Paula is fantastic. She is always ready for us. She gets us in and out of there in no time. She is always so well prepared, and we never have journal entries on her side. So that's something, you know, not every community gets to have, you know, a low amount of journal entries. I don't really go much anywhere where there's zero, like at the school. And we really don't have that many here. I know we've always relied on us to book a lot of your rules at your end, but I think Tanya's gonna slowly take that away from us, which, you know, I'll be happy to give that up. And have you guys talked Mike out of retirement yet?
We're working on it.
Yeah, we tried.
I'll help. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Reports of committees and commissions, the town manager's report.
Yes, so the only thing I'll mention in my report, unless there's questions on other parts of it, just the sale of the property on the South Reynolds Road. As you may recall, we had it under contract. The title company apparently felt as though if it was purchased, they wouldn't get a clean title. So the prospective buyer backed away. And what I asked the realtor to do is to notify the abutters to see if there's any interest on any of the abutters' parts. I'm waiting to hear back from that. So that's where that stands right now. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, unless somebody has questions about something else in my report.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mike, Mr. Chair. The Maple Ridge property, I understand that we're trying to work with Maine Farmland Trust. Do we have a date or tentative date as to when Maine Farmland Trust will do whatever they've got to do to make a decision to proceed?
We're meeting with them this week,
Okay,
so I'm hoping to get a timeline. I've never done this sort of process before, so I'm not really sure what to expect, but we're gonna meet with them, they're gonna explain it, and I'll ask to give us a timeline, so I can
Okay,
share
good.
that with the council.
thank you. And, you know, the only reason I bring it up, I have no problem with that approach. It's just, you know, time goes on and on and on, and if something's gonna happen, great. If it isn't, we gotta go plan
Gotta
B.
move on. Yep.
Thank you.
Industrial building closures. Johnny selected C. Are we all set? Not gonna be any more surprises?
No, well, I haven't got a time yet, but I've been given a date of the 19th of this month for the closing. So, from what I've seen of the DEP matter, it sounds like all that has been resolved, so that shouldn't be an issue. They've already done their due diligence, so at this point, I'm not expecting any surprises. I know
Know in a week.
it's been right, we'll know in a week.
Right, right. And the fire truck replacement, we're gonna talk about that
Yes,
later?
yes.
Okay, okay. Oh, is that it, Mike? That's it? Are we all done?
Yes, that's all
Okay,
right.
that's done. Department reports? Any issues with department reports? Is there a motion to accept the department? So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in, is it roll call or just, no, all those in favor as a whole? Great. Finance Committee's report?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Financial report?
So moved.
So, second.
All those in favor? Pretty easy. Going on, table business from the August 12th council. What's your pleasure?
That one
That
will
was-
remain.
That one will
Can
remain,
stay.
that will remain tabled. That's resolution 2025-2019. Old business, ordinance number 15-2019, providing for the amendment of ordinance number 4-2002, the administration of general assistance.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
All right.
Is that roll call?
Yep.
Yep.
Jeff West.
Yes.
Ray Karen.
Yes.
Ken Fletcher.
Yes.
Jerry Query.
Yes.
Patricia West.
Yes.
Ben Twitchell.
Yes.
6-0.
Order number 18, 2019, still under old business, providing for the abatement of personal property taxes on accounts that have been deemed out of business or the tax collector has determined that the collection cost would be greater than the taxes to be collected.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? No discussion? Roll call?
Jeff West.
Yes.
Ray Karen.
Yes.
Ken Fletcher.
Yes.
Yes.
Patricia West.
Yes.
Ben Twitchell.
Yes.
All right.
All right, new business, order number 20, 2019, providing for the authorization for the town manager to purchase a new fire truck bumper at a total cost not to exceed $644,000.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second, discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, but
Councilman-
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the information provided, getting it to us beforehand so we can take a look at it. And so I'm assuming that we've gone through some competitive bid process. Not, maybe not an absolute formal one, but you've looked at.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And so really, you know, if I could continue this.
For sure.
It really sounds like, that we've, I can't say that we've absolutely made up our mind we're gonna buy a pumper, but I think we've absolutely made up, we're gonna buy a pumper because we won't have one on the road in January because it won't pass inspection. So is really the primary decision we're gonna make is whether we buy it outright or do we go through a lease purchase? Is that kind of
Yes.
the
Yes.
deciding issue?
Yes.
Thank you.
In my report, I outlined
Yep.
either option.
So would we make that decision tonight?
Yes, so when you go through the order, as you'll see, there's two options. One is to purchase the pumper with existing funds, so that would be funds from the capital account, fire department capital account, and funds from the sale of town property, which in essence would be Johnny's portion of our industrial building, or at least a portion of the funds for that. The other option would be to lease the truck, and attached to my report were leasing options, so you could do 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years. And you can see the payments. So for a 5-year, the annual payment would be a little over $137,000. 7 years, it would be a little over $101,000, and for a 10-year, it would be over $74,000. Those would be the payments.
Good, Mr. Chairman, I took a look at that, and you correct me where I'm going wrong here, but like if we look at the 5 years, we will end up over that 5-year period paying $42,043 in interest.
Yep.
But the other thing I looked at, and I got myself all confused, there is also the concept of time value of money, which says that $100 in 2025 won't buy $100 worth of material or whatever you're gonna do. So when you factor that in, that $137,000 payment in year 5 isn't really the same $137,000 we're doing today. So I guess I'm kind of leaning towards, and I'd appreciate, the council's opinion on this, obviously, but I'm kind of leaning towards looking at a lease, because it's, by the time you factor everything in, the time value of money and what we could be earning, keeping $400,000, $500,000 theoretically in the bank, we really are not going to end up paying that much in real dollars for leasing it, from a standpoint of the interest. Now, that's my opinion, and if others have looked at it and
Good point.
think of it,
I tend to agree with you, Ken, because we also have the other one at some point.
Right.
And we do have that one bond that's gonna be expired in 22,
Right.
which could go actually towards that other truck.
That's right. So, that's my thought.
Yep.
Am I mistaken to say also that at least when you lease, you could always have a payout value at the end? You could always pay it off if you, say we get into, a favorable situation. We could
hit the
always,
jackpot?
yeah, that we could
okay.
always pay it off after. At least this gives us the flexibility.
Right.
Again, coming up into this budget season to have a little bit more, and with the ladder truck also in the background, that we could use that as far as that goes and stuff. And I guess the only question would be 7 annual or 10. I guess that would be
Well, I'd go
my
with
question. 5?
5, because that 137 seems to be a manageable number with the least amount of interest we would pay.
Yeah.
And like Jeff said, we know what is 2022, that we're retiring the bond, so
2015.
that kind of all slides in. So I was leaning towards 5 years, only because, that would get us a good start.
Mr. Chair, I have one question for the chief as well. What's a new tanker run, roughly?
Tanker will be a little bit more than an engine, based on the additional axle weight. And there it would require a dual rear axle versus the engine, which is a single rear axle.
Okay. I'm just thinking further down the road, if we keep that capital
That's right.
and we have a, oh God moment, at least we'd have half the money there already if we needed to purchase a third truck at some point.
Yeah, the 6 year, you get that 137 back in your budget.
Right. Assuming there isn't anything else we're gonna spend it on, right?
Yeah, that's right, that's correct.
No, they don't want it.
Won't happen again.
And that's only like from 5 to 7, that's only another $36,000, which, you know what I mean, in the municipal budget that we're talking about here for the value of getting it, you know, of getting it out just as quick as we can to spend on other things.
That's right.
And you got that bond coming up in what, 2 years?
Yeah, the 2015 bond retired.
Yeah. And that was what, hundreds and some thousand?
Isn't there a bond retiring the year after that too?
Yeah, I think there is. A year or two after
2
that.
years
I think it's a
after.
town
Yeah, so
garage.
2022 and 2024.
Right.
So we could,
That's still
In theory.
bring that all right in that same range.
Does somebody want to make a motion, that we do a 5-year lease on the
So
bumper?
moved.
Second.
Discussion? I think we've had pretty much a discussion. Chief, what's your feeling on that? So you don't care how we pay for it too much, as long as you get it right?
Well, you know, as we talked in the workshops, I am extremely sensitive to what we're doing here. And leasing or paying cash, the leasing option still is a prepaid upfront, and we get the benefit. I haven't read Mike's report to you, but I wanted to make sure that we made mention of the fact that we still take advantage of the deep discounts that that they've offered with the lease. So I would have to agree with you, whether you want to do 5, 7, or 10, you know, 10 years finance is a long time. I would tend to err on the 5 years, but again, that's up to you. That's up to you.
Does that discount have, how much of a discount, first of all? I put you on the spot.
Mr. Chairman, I can answer
Isn't it
that.
right here?
Yes, so the discount for the, what's referred to as the prepaid, which leasing we would be eligible for, is $17,893.
so
That for
would you
5
figure
years?
38,000? Was that your figure, Ken? Was your figure 38,000 for interest?
42,
42, so with that discount, we actually,
maybe half of it.
Yeah.
we're actually saving more money.
Right.
Any, oh, go ahead.
Can I make a motion to not have a second reading on this? Or I make-
Gotta pass the first one
Pass
first.
first.
What did,
Yeah.
oh,
Second.
okay.
Yeah. So any further discussion? Roll call vote?
Yes. Jeff West.
Yes.
Ray Karen.
Yes.
Ken Fletcher.
Yes.
Jerry Aquarian.
Yes.
Patricia West.
Yes.
Ben Twitchell.
Yes.
And thank you for the work that went into everything, and, you know, I know it was, we got a lot of information very quickly, bad information, you know, I mean, negative news, not information,
We received
but,
bad news, which
yeah.
precipitated this, yes.
yeah, but I think with this plan, in the future, we set ourselves up too for the best option of whatever we do with the ladder truck. You know what I mean? At least it sets us up in an option. Either we have some cash reserves that we can shoot at it to help minimize some of maybe the cost. I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but it's going to work out in the next couple months, that's for sure.
And I did want to remind that when the Assistance to Firefighter Grant opportunities open up, I will be applying for the grant for the tanker, because it is the oldest, and I have some strategies to try and make us a little bit more successful that I'll be talking with Mr. Hebner before we submit it.
Question. What happens if we would amend this order to include the Quinn? Can we get a better deal? Because it's the same company.
Same company, the deal, we're getting an astronomical deal right now with, whether you act upon it now, we have until January 30th to sign the deal. So we would not get a better deal. What I want would be, yeah, let's do it. Because that way I make one trip to the plant and review plans and do the walkthrough And I've made arrangements for this to be really on a fast track, and we have the potential opportunity to have, depending on the timing, the new Quint by August,
August of next year.
in 9 months, which is phenomenal.
And I notice here that says if we agree with purchase of both of them by January 30th, we get an additional $24.7 thousand.
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to remember our workshop, and of course, I think that the priority was obviously the engine.
Yes, sir.
Not that we don't have a priority on the ladder either, but
We
we're
have
saying
time.
that's the
Right.
first one that we've got to move forward on, because we were gonna have 12 to 16 months of hopefully usable life left in the existing ladder. So I thought what we had talked about doing is, let's get moving on in November on the engine, be ready in December to then talk about the ladder, which would put us in sync with that by January 30th deadline, if you want to call it that.
Your recollection is correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess the question, just to go along with Council West's proposal, is there an advantage for us to have the second reading tonight?
Yes,
Okay, so this will allow us to sign the paper and move,
yes, sir.
okay,
On the engine.
Yes,
on the
sir.
engine.
Now, if we do this on the engine tonight, if for some reason we decided not to go with the Quint
Right.
in January, would we still get the discount that they've given us on the engine?
Can't guarantee that. If it's not done by January 30th.
Right, but
That's the additional.
that's the addition.
That's for the additional.
Yeah.
But I have to be careful, because the prices were based on us purchasing 2 pieces of
Right,
equipment.
right. And so if we did take the second reading tonight, that would authorize you to sign whatever
Yes, sir.
purchase agreement
For the engine.
for the engine.
Yes, sir.
I guess the question, Mr. Chairman, between now and December, whenever, is there any information that's gonna come forward that would change our minds?
I can't see it myself. I see we have to act very shortly on the ladder truck, and so the Quint, so there is very little, and unless something really fell apart, that we could not have afforded in the budget, or couldn't budgetize it, that with what we did here with the 5-year lease, it sets us up for, we don't have really that many options, as we discussed at the, at the workshop set. This is bang, and then in December or January, I can see us next month deciding on the Quint, and then going the same way with the options of what are we gonna do? Are we gonna lease, or how much do we have now that, that we can shoot at it to get the lease payment down? And then those are the options that I think you have to come up with, between now and December, to let us have educated as to how we're going to finance the ladder truck. And I think that's where we're gonna stand.
Because they give us a good option here on the lease payments on the ladder truck as well.
Yep, so I think that's where we're gonna end up discussing that next month, so,
Yeah,
So I make a motion to waive the second reading.
yep.
second that.
And roll call?
Let's have a discussion
I'm sorry.
first. Yep, sorry. I was a little tardy there. I said, no. That was good.
If I might say, you're filling the chair very well.
Yeah, am I supposed to, my first chair, almost anyway. Any discussion on waiving the second reading? Also,
Yeah, all set.
Okay?
Go ahead, roll call.
Jeff West.
Yes.
Ray Karen.
Yes.
Ken Fletcher.
Yes.
Jerry Querian.
Yes,
Patricia West.
Yes.
Ben Twitchell.
Yes.
Okay.
and Steve is no.
Moving on, resolution number 40, 2019, providing for the approval of application for special amusement permit renewal for McCrillis Russo, Post 8835, located at VFW 175 Veteran Drive.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hand or is a hand vote or-
No, this is straight
roll call?
on for them.
Okay, so just a show of hands? Show of hands, all those in favor? Unanimous. Resolution number 41, 2019, providing for the application for a restaurant class 1, 2, 3, 4 liquor license and club catering license renewal, McCrillis Russo,
So
Post
moved.
18 VFW. Any discussion? If not, show of hands, all those in favor? All those not? Resolution number 42-2019, providing for the authorization for the town manager to accept $2,650 donation from the Friends of Fort Halifax to cover the cost of installing granite post in Fort Halifax Park. So moved.
Second.
Second, discussion. I actually have some discussion on this issue that I wasn't going to be chair when I did it, but
See you, gentlemen.
if I could, this will only take
what's your step?
Yep, about 10 minutes just to go over. Just wanted to let people know what the donation is going to be for and some of the work that's been going on down at the fort. Did I get one just so? You got one, John?
Thank you.
And I got some copies so that people won't fall asleep out here. A couple of posters. Couple of posters.
Oh,
Look how he stapled mine.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the machine didn't do it. The machine didn't do it.
He's a machine.
Yeah, Ray sketched this, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know, I'm wondering.
Yeah, this is very low-budget presentation. But one of the things that, if you look at the first page, is a rendition of Fort Halifax Park. That was 1876 for the Maine Historical Society. So at the lower bottom of the lower left-hand blockhouse, that's the existing blockhouse. And then as you go north, you have the officers' quarters. You take a turn east, and then you have the second blockhouse, and then you have the enlistment men quarters, and then that little blockhouse on the right-hand side of the page, that's actually the jail. And then there's actually guard shack. If you look up on top of the hill, there's two additional fortresses, and this was the 1876 rendition. If you turn the page to the next page, this is just, and this is just another rendition by somebody else in the Maine Historical Society, 1876. The furthest one that you go back is there is a lithograph of the at 1756, and that was a lithograph on some type of, I'm not sure what apparatus it was, but that's pretty much it. So you can see the blockhouse, and we'll just move on. I just wanted to let people know what some of the things, the terminology in the future. If you look to the next page, which is this page right here, so that's from the concept master plan that we put together back probably about now, Mike, about 10 years ago maybe.
Yeah.
So you can see that in the top picture is that the blockhouse is at the lower left-hand side, and then you move forward, there's a palisade, and then what is the officers' quarters is then in granite posts with some pavers in between. And then if you move forward, you see the second blockhouse, and then the enlistment men quarters, the jail, and you see the railroad running in between it. So, and then the next two pictures below are just some renditions of what we have right now. We've moved the parking lot, we have paving trails. So as a master concept plan, this was always in the master concept plan that we had coming up. So that was always good. One of the things we're also simultaneously working on is replacing the roof of the blockhouse. So as part of that, replacing the roof, one of the benefits is that the Friends of Fort Halifax got together because the town says, is there any money out there that we could put toward help out with the roof replacement? So the Friends of Fort Halifax got back together again, and we've been meeting pretty regularly now for the last maybe 3 or 4 months. Linda is part of the Friends of Fort Halifax, so it was really her idea to come up with, why don't we start, looking at doing the marking of the fort and the pavers for outlining of the original fort. So that's where it came. And then the next page, which is this page right here, it just diagrams that, all the work that we have done is pretty much on town property now. You can see Fort Halifax Park. You can see the railroad right-of-way in there. That's actually the railroad. And then there's a town of Winslow has a property. The blockhouse, existing blockhouse, is actually on the state of Maine property, and you can see it there on the left-hand side of the page, up above the railroad. And then CMP owns a lot to the right of the existing Fort Halifax. But we do own 2 parcels there that are still part of the original fort. So I just wanted to say that all the work that's being done would be on town property. And Mike, if I err, just say. Now, one of the things that we...
But these parcels, the ones that are to the east
Yes.
of the railroad, that's the parking area that everybody uses, not the Fort Halifax.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, that is true, Ken. Yep, very true. That's true. Yeah, and yeah, we'll have that outlined in a few. This right here is the Timothy Payne 1852 diagram that he sketched together from archaeological work that he did down there. And he went down there, and there was still some footings and some other things, and he put together this 1852 diagram. And this is pretty much what we have been, except for a few earlier things, but this is the one that is what we are going for. Timothy Payne was actually a resident, the Payne house that was torn down for Rite Aid, was at the Rite Aid location. That was called the Payne House. And so that was torn down, but he lived there. And he was in and out of Winslow. He was a doctor. He was a whole bunch of things. But he took a lot of interest in the Winslow history even at that time.
You're talking about Walgreens?
Yeah, Walgreens is now. So this is a diagram that he came up with at that point in time for that everybody that I can see pretty much uses for the historical significance. If you look to the next page right here, this is actually done by, I don't know if anybody remembers Rudy Fougere, probably some of us, but Rudy was in the Winslow Historical Society for a very long time. And he came up with Karen Delisle this rendition using a lot of different things of the actual fort. So you can see, again, the existing blockhouse coming over into the officers' quarters. You can see the chimney, the stairway, the outside latrine, and then the second blockhouse, and then the enlistment quarters with the chimney locations, and the jail with the actually gate that people came in and out of, and actually the dimensions of the blockhouse and stuff. So And then we're on to this page, the Fort Halifax page. And then there was, after talking to a lot of people that said, I think Mike I talked to, that says, well, have you found the granite markers yet? So it was like, I don't know, I never heard of the granite markers. But what we ended up doing is going down, and one marker was actually out of the ground, and we actually, by a series of other people getting involved, found the 3 markers. So you can see on this page that there's one granite marker here. I put number 1G, number 2G at the upper right hand, and then the number 3G that's in the actual parking lot down by where the jail would be in that thing. So we found all 3 granite markers, and then what Ernie Baker went down and actually surveyed and made dimensions as to where the granite markers were, and you can see that in the line that's not continuous. So and then what happened was Ernie went down too, and then. If you notice that the granite, I don't want to make a long story out of this. There's like a lot of stuff that went on, Mike, in the last really 3 months. But the granites were lined up on the edge of the blockhouses and at different locations. So what we did is saying, okay, that didn't seem to make sense to us. So what we did is we took the middle of the blockhouse and we went straight out. So we measured, did it, whatever, however, there was a process to figure out what that point was there. So we went out to the 107 feet, we went across to 107 feet, and then we went back to 117 feet, which was in the original 1852 plans. And then that's where we came up with is this, where the original, and we pinned them. So we pinned those locations. So now you got granite, and then you have a series of pins in those positions where we feel is the best educated guess. I don't think anybody's ever going to know exactly to the foot where these things are. So
it's going to be moving like this, according to Ernie Baker's.
Yes, it's going to. Yeah, but and there's another story to it. And then what we ended up doing was. The people that made the master concept plan was TGD and A. What's that stand for, Mike? Tadilla? Tuan, okay. And so that was part of the master plan, and they superlaid the railroad tracks onto the 1952, well, I'm not sure it's the 1952 plan, but this is what their rendition of was it at the time, so you can see it. And then if you go to, like, I just have a picture of the granite markers there. The question what we came up with today is Jerry came in because of the railroad issues that we might have as far as we're very close. If you look at this right here, you're on it, Ken, right there, you can see that if the right-of-way is 40 feet or 20 feet on each side of the railroad tracks, is that the second blockhouse center pin where we would like to put the granite is pretty close to the railroad right-of-way. It's not that close up to the jailhouse where that would be the 3rd pin. But in the meantime, what's happened is we also have a second engineer. Maybe you want to go over that process. Surveyor.
We have a surveyor who's actually going to do a plan for us, primarily for the future. That is going to do a plan for us and is going to put the railroad right-of-way on that plan. They've met with Lee Cramner, who is an archaeologist who has done a number of digs out there at the fort. And they've met out there, and he's identified the locations where the archaeological digs have been done, so that also is going to be included on a plan. So I wanted a plan that we could record in the Kennebec Registry of Deeds, so that in the future generations, if someone decides if something happens that our pins that we put in disappear, somebody could come back in the future and put everything right back in place.
All you need is one.
Yeah. So that's kind of the work that we have done. And if you look at the Provost monuments, so if you look at the proposal that came to, in what's in the ordinance is for 7 by 7 inch by 8 foot gray granite posts, that would be $750 each, and then one post that's only 4 foot, that would be in the parking lot, that would be flush to the ground to prevent, plowing issues and other issues like that. And then installation for a post and concrete foundation 4 feet deep in the ground, that's so the post would never vary, that it's like what they do for gravestones and stuff. And they'll do all the drawing, and if you go to the next page, that's actually the terminology at this point in time, not knowing the railroad right-of-way, that we would do northwest corner of the fort and officers' quarters, center point of the second blockhouse of the northwest corner. Now, depending on the, when we accepted, we voted from the Friends of Fort Halifax to give the money based on what this proposal was right here. If that pin on the second blockhouse center is on the railroad right-of-way, we could make that flush instead of having, there's some options, and when we talked to Jerry about it, is like, even though, say the right-of-way, depending on what the length of right-of-way, they would sell us a little bit of the land if we went through that process. Jerry kind of dissuaded us from that just because of the logistics of, like, we might end up, and they won't sell you a piece. It's gonna be from the park to the bridge. They're not gonna sell you a
Could you get an
piece.
easement?
Huh?
Could you get an easement?
Yeah,
I mean, it's-
you'd have to ask them.
Well, no, but I'm just saying.
It'd be hard.
If in fact we have to, use the word encroach
Yeah,
on that
Encroach it.
40-foot, 20,
yeah.
would they be at all acceptable to them for an easement? They still own the
Right.
land. The only thing they're giving us is the right to put,
Been there.
Yeah.
But you get an encumbrance.
right, yes.
And the railroad would like to sell us the thing whole. Because one of the problems is if we get an easement from them, they're gonna reserve a lot of stuff, and especially reserve the right to put another track in there at a future date. Not saying that that's gonna happen.
But if they sell us the land, they've lost the option.
Right.
Yeah, no, what they would do, they'd sell us the land.
But they come back and take it?
Yeah.
No, not take it.
That's a good deal.
With an option that they can still put another track.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's an issue, and it's an issue because if you notice on this map right here, and this is where I had some concern when I was looking Mike over, is you can see the right-of-ways, you know what I mean? Is there was another, and Jerry mentioned it, there was another spur in there that went obviously not to the roadside, but to the other side.
Yeah.
And if that right-of-way includes that spur, that would be from the center of the two, which would encroach more on to the park and make it so that, you know what I mean, the right-of-way might be way down. If you look at it, their right-of-way might include the second blockhouse. We don't know that until the survey comes back. And Jerry, what's the map that the railroad, a Val map? So
Val plan.
Mike sent an email to the surveyor, Bob Milton, from Broken Stones, and then we're gonna put that on the report that Bob Milton will send us, so that we know exactly where we're gonna put that, there's some issues where, there's always issues, and so this is one of the issues that we need to resolve before, we weren't gonna do it till the spring anyway, but we should have this all resolved by.
But we don't know it's a problem yet.
Yeah, we don't know.
The survey that's gonna have the right-of-ways on it. Once we get that plan, then we'll know what issues exist, if any.
So, for goodness, Chairman, so what Resolution 422019 is principally saying is the town managers to accept $2,650 donation from the Friends of Fort Halifax, right?
Yes.
So,
For the posts.
for the post, right? So if we approve that, then you're authorized to accept the money, and then you can decide, not you, but the Friends of Fort Halifax, going forward, if that turns out to be an issue, then there's an issue.
Yeah, well, we would, you know, and we have points to saying, well, let's bring it 10 feet in, let's put it at the edge of the officers' quarters, and then do that, and maybe put another, you know, concentrate on the officers' quarters and the other portion of the portions that are in our right of way, and make those enhanced, you know what I mean?
But there's not anything really the council has got to decide on
No.
that, other than authorize the town manager to accept a donation.
I just wanted to let you guys know what we've been doing down there, in case you heard it.
Thank you.
And then just for you know what I mean, and what we're planning on doing for the future.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Now, if we gotta deal with the railroad, is it gonna be Mike has to deal with the railroad, or Friends of Fort Halifax?
I
Or
think
both?
it'd have to be Mike.
Yeah,
Mike.
yeah, it's town.
If we accept the donation right now,
Yep.
I'd stay away from the railroad as much as possible.
Well, you did such a good job when we moved that road over, which we had tried to move that road for a long time, years, 5+ years. And, you know, you came in and you got the road moved and helped facilitate getting the road moved, so we thought you could do
The railroad wanted,
great,
Another miracle.
the railroad wanted
miracle, but I guess,
$100,000.
I guess not. Oh, well. Any other discussion points? Let's end yeah, any,
It's not a roll
it's
call.
not a roll call vote. So, all those in favor, raise your hand. All those are not. We get into the public comment portion of the evening. Everybody's been patient if they have any public comment. Sure, we should put the public comment earlier. I think we lost some.
Yeah, we
Maybe
do
that's
usually have
that's
that in the
the
beginning.
reasoning behind it. Is if we wait till the end, we'll attrition out people.
Really want to say something.
Really, we'll make it so painful that no one will ever say anything.
Why did we move it to the end? Because it was in the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think, didn't Steve figure out that as people sat there all meeting, they might have a comment
Right,
that they didn't come in with or something?
True.
I think that's what his
Yep.
logic was.
And their questions get answered, you know, we discuss it.
I'm sure they clean them out.
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
Oh,
Yes,
we might have
no,
public
We do
comment.
have some public comment.
You know, one of the things we promise is to try to give you information about your schools. So if I can take a few minutes of your time to give you some information about your schools. You know, we just ended the first quarter, and a lot of things happened. And I was going to invite all of you to come to the next school board meeting, which is next Monday, to have, so that you could listen to the MEA scores and what's happened with that. Unfortunately, we don't have all the information from the state that we need to have, so we're going to push that to the December meeting. But certainly you can be invited to that. I think some of you attended that.
Can you send us an email
Sure.
reminding us?
Some of you attended that last year, and I think you found it valuable in terms of how do we set our goals and how do we give the scores to the results. The results have gone in the correct direction in grades 3 through 8 in the area of reading. You're going to see that we are at or above state overall. So that's good. Math, we still have some work to do, but we knew that. A few other things I just want to touch base upon. You probably know that the girls won the Class B field hockey state championship game a few weeks ago. That was exciting for them. This weekend, the boys football team playing the semifinal game and play MCI in Hamden Academy. So if they win that, they go on to the states as well. Championship Saturday.
Peter,
I'd like to tell you a little bit about
where's the football game gonna be?
Hamden Academy.
Hamden Academy,
Hamden at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
next week? This
Saturday.
weekend?
This Saturday.
Yeah.
If we don't have any snow, I don't think it's gonna be.
Who cares?
The other thing I'd like to mention to you is we have a musical that is going to be held on the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd of November. We have 65 students participating in this musical, And the musical is called Curtains, and if you get a chance to attend, that would be awesome to see you there.
I don't have a choice.
Where?
That's good.
Is that at the high school? Junior high?
It's at the high school. Construction meeting tomorrow. I know that some of you would like to attend that, so we have that tomorrow. Things are continuing to go well with the construction project, so we're very pleased with that.
What time is that at? I'm sorry.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
And it's at the high school as well. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar, know that this happened, but, you know, obviously we had the tragedy with McCormick's, and so the athletic teams got together a few days ago, on Sunday actually, and all of the teams showed up, and they had a huge bottle drive, and raised a little over $3,000 for the employees, so I mean, it was another example of our kids working with the community. Last Thursday, I know I saw at least one of you there, standing in the rain. We had a tribute to the veterans at McDonald's. Our pep band played in the rain, some songs for the veterans. Tribute there. And Jerry, I saw you there as well, so that was nice.
He's always there.
We had our annual craft fair last Saturday. Great turnout again.
Good job. Good job.
And I just had another 2-minute video to show you on WAVI on something that happened at the high school not too long ago. If you can bear with me for a 2-minute video. Take long to get the thing, to get my antiquated machine lit up. Maybe you saw this on TV.
Tomorrow?
Do the bottom, no, all the way to the left, the bottom one.
Yeah.
Well, we could always change it. We approve fine, but I think our discussion in December around the ladder truck. Well, that's what I'm saying, the ladder. Oh, yes. December, you can pay off sooner, great. Because it's a higher amount. Right. And the difference in, won't say it. So, but the payments, that the issue becomes all those payments adding up. Right. Right? And of course, I think the big piece is what we do with our money.
That works well.
It works really good. I have to ask my assistant to hold this.
You are gonna play commercials too, right?
Hope not.
Skip those.
Air Force veteran of the Vietnam War was presented today with the Distinguished Flying Cross Award 50 years after earning it. Spencer Roberts was at the Coal Land Transportation Museum in Bangor for that ceremony.
Oh, hang on just a second.
Grade school, I knew then that I wanted to be a fighter pilot.
The Distinguished Flying Cross to Captain Charles A. McClave for extraordinary treatment while participating in aerial flight 13 June 1969.
This honor means that I was doing the right thing that day.
Now retired Major Charles McClave was presented with one of the highest U.S. military decorations for his actions in Vietnam.
Hang on just a second. I know that's exciting, but that's not what I was trying to show you. I gotta hold this thing with one hand, so I'm having a hard time toggling through here.
Do you want me to hold that for you?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Let me get it here. So it's unified. Here you go.
A very special day for us as we are receiving a very important title.
That title, by Champion School. There are 10 components a school has to have to garner the honor, like fielding a team, hosting events, and getting the entire school on board.
When we started this about almost 5 years ago, you could see the change almost immediately with kids high-fiving in the hallways and walking each other to class, and it just becomes this community that people want to be at. They want to be at school, they want to be included. They want to show that they're including people.
A blackout pep rally held Tuesday morning to mark the occasion.
See this much black, it gives me goosebumps, honestly.
Yeah, it was like awesome, brother.
To come in here and see that they had a rally specifically for the unified presentation, and to see the kids do a blackout in honor of the students, to see the support, the amazing video they showed, where they just showed that everything in their school is unified. It's pretty overwhelming, and I'm just so proud of them.
I'm not gonna lie, I was teared up a little bit. It's really nice to see that everyone across the state of Maine is really trying to have that inclusion. Unified is amazing, and I wish that every school could experience what we get to experience every year, because it's something, you go to a game and you're gonna cry, you're gonna laugh, you're gonna cheer, you're gonna smile, and then you're gonna cry again. Just from happy tears and tears that you just go, wow, these kids are amazing.
Brian Sullivan. Anything else I should ask you guys about that I don't know? I don't know a lot about Winslow basketball.
I guess I'm good.
No, twins.
So this wasn't, I think the important piece I really want to point out here is this wasn't just about basketball. This is Unified Banner School. So there are 90 high schools in the state of Maine that participate in the Unified Basketball League. But it also is, it's the inclusion piece, where we include all students in all activities and all things. Out of those 90 schools that participate, only 5 have received this award. Winslow is the 5th school in the state of Maine to receive that. So it's quite an honor, and it says a lot about the population. You might have noticed that during that full school assembly, the students were wearing black. That's because the day before they had a unified student do the announcements at the end of the day. And he announced tomorrow's a blackout day. All the kids wore black.
Oh, okay.
So-
Okay, I thought you shut the lights off.
That's what they
Oh, I did too.
So it's pretty impressive. It says a lot about the kids. It says a lot about the community.
Very good.
Thanks for letting me share for a few moments. I know it's a long meeting. I guess the only other thing that I would say, it's really nice to see many of you appear at different events. It's nice to see that support. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Peter.
Unified games, I think they start in January. If you haven't been to one, you should go.
Any other public comment? Discussion items?
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think we have our next, I call it the ambulance meeting, but it's November 20th, I think it's 6th. And, I went to the last one, and what I would suggest is that maybe if we could, through Steve, I think Steve's chairing it, have an agenda beforehand so people could see what we were going to talk about.
And you can follow it.
Right. And that the other thing, and of course I'm sure that you've been following it, all the newspaper articles about this, really the same discussion in Waterville. And I'm not saying that we have to follow that pattern, but I think their consensus appears to be that they need additional, not verification, third-party analysis and so forth, because I've spent a little bit of time looking at it, and there's some key variables in there, and if we don't get them right, or if we don't get them accurate, it's going to affect the whole viability of it. So what I would suggest is for that at least November 20th meeting is to try to get an agenda, try to get out all the information that we have to everybody. I don't know if they've all got it, that are on the committee, just so people can hopefully read it before we walk in and we aren't talking about the same things we talked about last time.
Right.
So
I think
Mike,
that, yeah.
Mike can maybe talk to Steve. And
Yep, we'll do that.
I think your point about a third party would be good. We're a lot, I think, ahead of Waterville. At least we got Delta involved. We got all the players that are supposed to be involved that are there. The only thing we don't have is it's like almost like the emotionality of the situation from the town perspective. We need that third party to gather the information and present the information. I think because I'm not saying it was dysfunctional, but the information was not going. It's not forthcoming, and to get the facts, to get the numbers, to get everything needed, I think that third party might be beneficial at this, but I think it might be an agenda item at the meeting that should have is.
Right.
What,
Just to see if the committee would be in favor of that.
yeah, and what's the sources of that third party? I think that's as important, so that if you came to the meeting, you'd know what your options were for a third party, and then you could at least have a somewhat of a non-emotional discussion
Yeah,
on that type of situation. So if we could, I think Ken's absolutely right, is what would the third party look like? And we need to have that on the agenda to say, or else I see that committee is going to be a slow moving, or what's people's thoughts on that? Go ahead, Jerry.
Basically, what you're looking at is a facilitator and, oh, correct, now I can't remember the other one. Basically, facilitator and all the stakeholders together. Where the facilitator is basically keeps pushing us
Yeah.
to get that information and not to repeat. Or if we get to a point where we're splitting apart,
I think what
he can
Ken's
bring us
talking,
back.
I think what Ken's talking about is someone who's in the business, who's a
Right.
professional, who can do an analysis and present to us the numbers, what the impact's gonna be, what's gonna be needed, what resources are gonna be needed. But somebody who can do an independent analysis on having an ambulance service.
Right. It's a pretty straightforward issue. Although it's very, very complicated, but it's a very straightforward issue in my mind. It's the transport from Winslow to the hospital. And can we effectively do that, and what are the implications if we do that? Because one of the questions I have in my mind is, here is the Delta ambulance been doing it for I don't know how many years, a lot of years. If we start to go in and we start to transport, and Waterville starts to transport, is that gonna take away enough base that their service is actually gonna be ramped back because they lost volume? It's a question of volume. But that's a question, but that's not a statement of fact. So I think it's all part of that, right? That you have to look at the whole.
But in the news the other day, they talked about the Waterville group, and the Delta was gonna leave one of their ambulances at the fire station in Waterville for them to use.
Right.
For a backup.
No, if there was no money in it, they wouldn't be doing it still.
No, that's right, that's right.
And
So anyway.
there were a lot of things that were said in that meeting by a certain individual who happens to run an ambulance company that does not supply a paramedic to every call.
Right. See, and
even though he alluded to the fact that he does.
Yeah.
But he does not. They have fly cars for that. And there were a few other statements that he doesn't pay all his paramedics $25 an hour. I can guarantee you that.
See, and that's the struggle, I guess, that I'm having. I'm looking at the information which is in written form, because I can't remember what Joe Blow said or Tom said. And I'm trying to put that together and put a business plan together. And there's some key variables in there that you gotta get right. And so anyway, rather than try to solve it here, the point is, going into that meeting, if we could get every bit of information that we've got out there, so all the committee members could see it coming in, we might not be going around in circles as much.
I think the one advantage we have, we actually do it in the public eye.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yes, that's the other advantage.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, well, we're just talking about a little bit of everything. Should we tonight, before we're over, recognize the winners of the election?
Oh, yes, yes.
We haven't done that yet. We have both winners here tonight.
I was gonna do that. I was gonna congratulate you. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mr. Trahan over here and Mr. West.
Thank you very much for running.
Yes.
Thank you. Congratulations and condolences.
Yeah.
How would you like your packet delivered? That's a heated topic here that we obviously. Oh,
Okay.
interesting choice.
Yeah.
Don't tell people that.
Okay, so I think we're good. Again, just to close the major meeting before we go into executive session, all the town of Winslow right now is in pain for the loss of a firefighter. And so, you know, if you see a firefighter out, or if you see a police officer, or any really town employee, it's all a family that is really hurting right now. So as you go about your task in the next couple weeks, if you could keep that into your thoughts, and a lot of the thankless jobs that go on for really not getting paid for what they really deserve in this time of pain, just remember that there's a lot of hurting people out there right now, and in memory of Mr. Higgins. Jerry, could you go into executive?
Motion to enter into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 405, 6C, disposition of real property.
Second?
All those in favor? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Peter.